They call it the Seed.
I am admittedly a fan of both the beat-em-up and run-and-gun genres, but I love myself nothing more than a perfect fusion of the two that brings me the best of both worlds. Yes, this might not exactly be the talk of the gaming fraternity, but such hybrids exist, where intense close-quarters brawling is mixed with some shooting action. The heavenly blending of melee with firearms creates a magically fast-paced action game that keeps you on your toes. And if I haven't been able to sell the unique fusion genre yet, well, these following games in this video might just do the trick, as you find out what I'm really talking about here. Gunstar Heroes 1993. I've gotta say, when I first loaded up Gunstar Heroes on my Genesis, I wasn't prepared for the absolute mayhem that was about to unfold on my screen. Treasure absolutely knocked it out of the park with their debut title, creating something that still holds up as one of the finest action games ever made. You're playing as either Gunstar Red or Blue, tasked with retrieving 4 mystical gems before Colonel Red can resurrect the ancient android Gold and Silver and destroy the entire planet G9. The story itself is straightforward but charming, with your sister Yellow guiding you from the sidelines, while your brainwashed brother Green becomes the tragic enemy you must face. What makes this game legendary, though, is the sheer technical brilliance of the gameplay. You've got 4 base weapons: Force for rapid fire, Lightning for penetrating shots, Chaser for homing attacks, and Flame for close-range devastation. And the genius mechanic allows you to combine any 2 weapons into 14 different weapon combinations. The visuals are absolutely stunning for 1993, with detailed sprite work, massive bosses that fill half of the screen, and an incredible sense of scale that made my jaw drop. The cooperative play added this element of fun chaos where my friend and I could just wreak havoc together. Alien vs. Predator Arcade 1994. Playing Alien vs. Predator in the arcade was an experience I'll never forget, and honestly, it remains one of the best beat-em-ups Capcom ever created. The premise alone gets the adrenaline pumping. You're teaming up with up to 2 players to fight off waves of xenomorphs while unraveling a conspiracy involving the nefarious Weyland-Yutani Corporation and a rogue general named Bush, who started this whole BioWar project. You've got 4 characters to choose from: Major Dutch Schaefer and Lieutenant Lin Kurosawa as the human soldiers, or the hunter and warrior predators. Dutch hits enemies with his cybernetic arm and uses a devastating smart gun. Lin wields a rapid-firing handgun with her katana, while the predators brought their signature melee weapons, a staff for the hunter and a spear for the warrior, alongside their iconic shoulder-mounted plasma weapons. Capcom nailed the movie's sound effects, and hearing that pulse rifle crack was absolutely satisfying. The difficulty is punishing at times, with swarms of enemies overwhelming you if you're not careful, but that's what made it so addictive in the arcade. My only criticism is that it would have been incredible to have Ripley as a playable character, but fighting as a predator with a plasma caster more than makes up for that missed opportunity. The Punisher Arcade 1993. When I discovered the Punisher arcade game, I realized I'd been sleeping on one of the greatest comic book video game adaptations ever made. Capcom created something special here, taking Frank Castle's brutal vigilante justice and translating it into a side-scrolling beat-em-up that actually feels like you're part of a gritty crime thriller. The story follows the Punisher himself alongside S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Nick Fury, as they systematically dismantle the Kingpin's criminal empire, starting with taking down mobsters in New York casinos and eventually assaulting the King building itself. What I love most about this game is how it perfectly balances melee combat with a crazy arsenal of weapons you'll pick up throughout the levels. The comic book presentation is phenomenal, with onomatopoeia splashing across the screen, blam, for gunshots that makes every action feel impactful. The visuals have this incredible comic book aesthetic that makes you feel like you're fighting through a living Marvel panel. My only issue is that the latter bosses, particularly the final showdown, can feel slightly repetitive if you're not mixing up your tactics. But overall, The Punisher is an absolute gem that deserves way more recognition.
Unhealthy. In.
Huntdown 2020. I was completely blown away when I discovered Huntdown because it felt like someone finally created the modern run-and-gun game I've been waiting for. This 2020 gem drops you into a near-future city that's been overrun by rival gangs, and you take on the role of one of 3 bounty hunter mercenaries tasked with taking down the crime syndicates. The story is simple, but effective. Hunt down the 5 key members of each gang and eliminate them. But what makes Huntdown special is the incredible character work and personality injected into the world. You'll face bikers, hockey players, and all sorts of thematic enemy types that actually make the gangs feel distinct from each other. The gameplay is absolutely stellar, combining classic run-and-gun mechanics with this cover-based system that reminded me of a 2D Gears of War. What really impressed me visually is the gorgeous 16-bit aesthetic with some of the smoothest animations I've seen in a modern retro-style game. The bosses are incredibly creative and varied, from mech suit users to hockey enforcers who literally check you off the arena. My only minor complaint is that the optional objectives lack some variety, but everything else about Huntdown is exceptional. Midnight Fight Express 2022. Midnight Fight Express absolutely caught me off guard with how fresh and stylish it made the beat-em-up genre feel back in 2022. This is a modern masterpiece created by solo developer Jacob Zueno, and it's a testament to what one person with vision can accomplish. You're fighting off your way through 41 levels in a sprawling cyberpunk city, battling corrupt cops and organized crime in what becomes this incredible narrative about systemic corruption and redemption. What really got me hooked was the combat system, which borrows from Sifu and the Batman Arkham games in the best ways possible. You're tapping for quick combos, holding for heavy attacks that break guards, and as you progress, you unlock these devastating cinematic finishing moves based on real martial arts. There's something incredibly satisfying about slamming a guy's head against a wall or hoisting an enemy above your shoulders and hurling them into their friends. You unlock perks on a skill tree that lets you customize your playstyle, whether you want to focus on parrying, disarming, or pure offense. Even with some minor flaws, the combat mechanics are so tight and the visuals so polished that I couldn't stop playing until I'd beaten it. Mother Russia Bleeds 2016. Mother Russia Bleeds has a story that is dark and visceral. You're fighting through a dystopian Russia where you're a victim of experimental drug enhancement, seeking revenge against a system that exploited and destroyed you. What immediately grabbed me was how graphically the game presents itself. Heads explode into clouds of meat, bodies pile up in brutal fashion, and the visual presentation in this beautiful canvas of violence that somehow works thematically. The boss battles are masterfully designed, and I sure would remember one encounter where the helicopter turrets were shredding the enemies around me, and another where I had to use flashbangs on enemies with night vision goggles. The visual design is incredible, with detailed backgrounds that show a crumbling society. The melee combat feels absolutely satisfying, with juggling opponents in the air and ground and pound mechanics feeling brutal and weighty. My major complaint is that the final boss difficulty spike is insane. It took me 90 minutes to finally topple that encounter compared to the 20 minutes I spent on other difficult bosses, which feels like poor balance in an otherwise masterfully designed game. Broforce 2015. Broforce had me laughing and exploding things in equal measure throughout my entire playthrough. This 2015 indie game is an absolute love letter to the 1980s action movies, with every single playable character being a parody of famous action heroes. There's Rambo Force, Brominator, Brodator. It's absolutely ridiculous, and that's what makes it perfect. The story is hilariously over the top. You're basically just a team of elite special forces taking down terrorist organizations and saving hostages across various missions, but the gameplay is where the magic happens. The level design is phenomenal. because nearly every single environmental object is destructible. I found myself constantly creating new paths through stages by tunneling under obstacles rather than taking the traditional route, adding this incredible layer of strategic problem solving to the action. Each character has unique weapons and special moves, so every time I died or rescued a hostage and switched characters, the gameplay felt fresh and different. The destructible environments interact with the enemies in hilarious ways. You can bait enemies into triggering explosives or cause chain reactions that wipe out entire groups. My only criticism is that the cooperative multiplayer can get too chaotic with multiple players and explosions everywhere to the point where you lose track of what's happening. Assault Suits Valken, or Cybernator 1992. Assault Suits Valken, known as Cybernator in North America, is a game that still blows my mind when I play it in 2025 because it was created on a Super Nintendo back in 1992. This is a 2D mecha action game with platforming elements, and it's set in this future world where Earth's fossil fuels are running out and two superpowers, the Axis and Federation, are locked in a devastating global war for resources and territorial rights. You play as Jack Brain, a soldier piloting the Federation's assault suit, and your mission is to destroy Billboard, the ultimate weapon of the Axis forces. The visuals are impressive for the SNES, with detailed sprite work for the mecha and various environments, from war-torn cities to moon bases. The story has this Gundam-style narrative about a soldier fighting in a war he didn't create, dealing with themes of survival versus patriotism that actually gave the game some depth. My only issue is that some sections can feel repetitive, and the level design occasionally forces you into specific paths without much flexibility, but none of this is serious enough for you to not try this classic. Devil's Third 2015. Devil's Third is a game that critics absolutely destroyed. And honestly, I can understand why on many fronts, but I've also found things to appreciate about this chaotic Wii U exclusive. The story follows Ivan, a tortured soldier dealing with trauma from a detention facility, and the game opens with a surprisingly thoughtful sequence of him escaping Guantanamo Bay-style circumstances. The premise has potential for something meaningful about the detached nature of modern warfare, but unfortunately, the game immediately abandons that nuance. The gameplay attempts to blend melee combat and gunplay, which sounds great in theory, but the execution feels clunky and imprecise in practice. You can switch between guns and melee weapons like hatchets and machetes mid-combat, which would be incredible if the controls responded more reliably, but instead it often feels hit or miss. What's weird is that the multiplayer actually works surprisingly well, with the modes like Battle Royale and Team Deathmatch that embraces thematic action without the pretentious storytelling in the way. The problem is that the campaign itself feels like it was designed by people who secretly hated video games. The combat never feels truly satisfying. The story is incoherent, and by the final boss, all you feel is relief. It's all over. Devil's Third is a fascinating failure, not the worst game ever made, but certainly a missed opportunity. Gungrave Overdose 2004. Gungrave Overdose took me by surprise compared to the original Gungrave, delivering this over-the-top third-person shooter experience that perfectly captures the anime aesthetic of the franchise. This is a direct sequel that picks up after the original's events, and you're back controlling Beyond the Grave, this silent, badass anti-hero equipped with two handguns that never need reloading. The story is absolutely bonkers. Graves hunting down the son of a mafia boss who's made a deal with a symbiotic seed entity bent on taking over Earth. The gameplay loop is incredibly satisfying. You're constantly firing at waves of enemies while dodging incoming bullets and using your coffin weapon to thrash foes or serve as a shield and cannon. The visuals are absolutely gorgeous, with semi-animated comic book-style panels and cutscenes that look outstanding even today, especially the boss defeat sequences. Where Overdose truly shines is the sheer spectacle of the action, with that Max Payne-style dodge mechanic and the ability to deflect enemy rockets back at them. Despite that pacing issue, Overdose is absolutely worth experiencing for its unique anime energy and satisfying gunplay. Gungrave G.O.R.E 2022. Gungrave G.O.R.E feels like a love letter to everything that made the series special, while modernizing the gameplay for 2022, and I totally fell in love with it. After nearly 20 years since the last mainline entry, Iggy Mob brought Grave back more stylish and anime-fied than ever. The story of vengeance, love, and loyalty plays out through this beautiful third-person action shooter, and honestly, the narrative moment hits harder than expected. The visuals are absolutely gorgeous, with anime-quality character animations during attacks that make you feel like you're controlling an action anime. The animations have this incredible weight to them, and when you're comboing enemies, it's this beautiful ballet of bullets and brutal violence. The dodge mechanics feel responsive, the boss battles are epic and varied, and the difficulty curve is actually fair. The game does an incredible job balancing style with substance, and if you appreciate anime aesthetics mixed with brutal action gameplay, Gungrave G.O.R.E is an absolute must-play. Rolling Thunder 2, 1991. Rolling Thunder 2 is a game that honestly doesn't get nearly enough recognition when people talk about their favorite action games, but this 1991 Namco arcade masterpiece deserves to be in every conversation about the best run-and-guns ever made. The original Rolling Thunder was set in 1968, but the sequel moves the action to the present day with a more contemporary and futuristic aesthetic that completely refreshed the franchise. You're playing as either Albatross or Layla, who's, let's be honest, looks suspiciously like Mine Fujiko from Lupin III, infiltrating Geldra bases hidden throughout a seaside resort in Florida and deep within a pyramid in Egypt. The gameplay retains everything that made the original special. You're running and gunning through side-scrolling levels, taking cover behind walls and obstacles, strategically managing your ammunition and power-ups. What impressed me the most is the improved cooperative gameplay that lets you tackle the Geldra invasion with a friend, doubling the chaos and fun. The enemy variety is fantastic, with cyborg masters replacing the old hooded terrorist designs, giving the game this more futuristic feel. The graphics for an arcade game are gorgeous, with distinct visual themes between the Florida resort and Egyptian pyramid locations. The controls are tight and responsive, giving you full confidence in your character's movement and aiming. Overall, this is definitely a game to remember for me. Valeris 2019. Valeris is this glorious over-the-top heavy metal fever dream of a run-and-gun game that absolutely demands to be played if you have any appreciation for the genre. This 2019 release from Hog Dev is set on the planet Valeris, where you're playing as Therion, a consummate badass warrior returning to his homeworld to discover it's been overrun by aliens. The tone is pure heavy metal aesthetic. The music absolutely pumps with metal tracks that pump your adrenaline without becoming distracting, and the entire presentation feels like a Doom-style action fantasy, but with aliens instead of demons. Each weapon has distinct damage, range, spread patterns, and special effects, making every discovery feel meaningful. You equip a sidearm, a melee weapon that deals high damage and restores energy, and a powerful main weapon that consumes energy. The level design is phenomenally tight. Checkpoints are perfectly spaced so that the tension of weathering hordes of enemies and desperately seeking the next safe zone creates this incredible exhilaration. The enemy design is superb, with cannon fodder grunts letting you shred through them while tougher elite aliens keeps you on your toes. Visually, it's this beautiful pixel art nightmare, though I'll admit the screen can get a bit visually messy with all the sprites, projectiles, and animations happening simultaneously, making it occasionally hard to read incoming threats. Ruiner 2017. This Polish-developed title from Raycon Games plays as an isometric twin-stick shooter set in the cyberpunk metropolis of Rangok in 2091. You're playing as a silent masked protagonist known only as Puppy, tasked by a mysterious hacker named Her with rescuing your kidnapped brother from heaven, a conglomerate that controls the entire city. What makes Ruiner special is the narrative twist where your mission becomes far more complicated than simple rescue, and you're navigating rival gangs, rogue hackers, and corporate mercenaries in this web of deception. The gameplay brilliantly blends melee and range combat, letting you dash around arenas, taking on groups of enemies while avoiding their counterattacks and environmental hazards. The combat system requires constant adaptation. You learn enemy patterns, upgrade your dash ability for faster recharge and bonus damage, and experiment with different weapon and skill combinations. The isometric perspective gives it this unique visual style that sets it apart from traditional side-scrolling action games. There's this euphoric feeling when you finally perfect your approach and run circles around a boss, understanding exactly when to dash, when to attack, and how to chain kills together. The visuals are slick and modern with neon-soaked environments that perfectly capture the cyberpunk aesthetic. The Dishwasher Vampire Smile 2011. The Dishwasher Vampire Smile is a grim, gorgeous, violently entertaining masterpiece from Ska Studios that shows what pure passion for craft can accomplish in this indie game development. The sequel to 2009's Dead Samurai picks up after the original's events and delivers two separate campaigns, one following the Dishwasher and another following his stepsister Yuki. She was falsely imprisoned and blamed for world destruction, and she emerges on the moon with a chainsaw implant replacing her arm, ready to pursue vengeance against three figures of power called the Banker, General, and Judge. The gameplay is frantic and hyperkinetic with fast camera zooms, blood spurts, and visual chaos that initially seems overwhelming, but becomes this zen-like experience once you acclimate. The most memorable moments are when the narrative actually infiltrates the gameplay, creating moments that communicate desperation and confusion in ways static cutscenes never could. The melee combat is incredibly satisfying with multiple weapons like swords, chainsaws, and firearms, creating different playstyles. The difficulty curve is exquisite, scaling from the campaign's moderate challenge on medium difficulty to genuinely punishing encounters on harder modes. Marvelous Verdict. It's always fun to try something out of the box. So as you can see here, the video mostly touches upon those titles that are slightly out of the box. These might not be the most popular games out there, but I can assure you that you will experience the satisfying blend of beat 'em up and run and gun when you try them out. Maybe with a bit more success in such innovative fusion genres, we can expand the horizon of the gaming industry and promote more of these gems in the future. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, which of these games you're familiar with, and also share the ones that you think deserve a mention here.